What is up, everybody? We have a very, very exciting episode for all of you today. I just want to thank everybody who came out, and our last month episode on the Great Keto Debate was awesome. So I decided to do another one, and you guys picked this episode. We ran a poll, and this is the one everyone wanted to talk about. I am excited to talk about. We are going to dive into the nitty gritty about childhood obesity. It is going to be an epic panel, and I am super excited to have my guests here today. I want to introduce all of them for you guys, and then we're going to dive right into this. So first up, we have a person who's been known me for at least 3 years. Welcome to the show, Allie. Allie, why don't you tell us all a little bit about yourself?
All right. I'm glad to be here today. This is a topic very near and dear to my heart as a mom of 3 kids. And as a personal trainer, I could definitely get around this topic and talk for hours about it. And I'm super excited to be here.
Excited to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. Next up, we got Amy, another trainer of mine at Redefined Fitness. Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me, Anthony. I am, aside from being a personal trainer, a social worker. So again, like Allie, this topic is very near and dear to me. I suffered from child obesity myself. I am a mom of 2 kids. I've dealt with it in my private practice and social work. So it is a very important topic for me.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Amy was a client turned trainer, has her own kids, and is a social worker on top of all of this. So we're going to get a little bit of that aspect on the show as well. And then next up, we have someone I don't know at all, but I'm excited to have him on the show. So Nate, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, man?
Sure. About Nate Garrison. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. So the accent's going to sound a little different. I'm not a personal trainer. I think I'm just a glutton for punishment. I guess my claim to fame would be I'm a 4-time Ironman and a father of 5. So
wow.
So both of these will apply to me.
You have 5 kids?
I do.
Wow.
What are their ages?
Well, that gets even more exciting. So my oldest is 24 and my youngest is about to turn 4.
Wow, you're just all over. So you're going to get it from the young perspective up to kids that are already adults now.
Paying for college meal plans and baby food at the same time can be a lot of fun. So
I'm excited to do this, guys. And just for my audience, everyone listening, those watching live, if you can hear us, see us, just please comment and let us know. And if you have any questions that you want to ask anyone specifically or just in general, please go ahead and post it up there. We'll get them and we'll kind of talk about it. But in general, we're going to break down this into 3 segments. And these are the 3 segments that I personally chose based upon what I think sees fit. So the first one is going to be parents. How do parents play a role and what's the importance of it? The next thing, it's a big one to me, is schools. How do schools get involved and what can schools do differently? And the third one is going to be a little bit of a more broad topic, but society. I want to see the implications done in our society and our culture and how that can play a role into what I'm calling this new epidemic. So to start, we're going to turn it right over to Allie. And I just want you to give us a brief explanation of your kids. I know you have 3 of your own, 3 girls. Tell us a little bit about how you raised them. And as a parent, some important things that played a role in keeping your kids healthy.
Okay. Oh, that's all right. So my kids are now 21, 19, and 15. We've always tried to set a good example because, as we know, little kids and babies don't decide what they want. It's what we give them. You could take them to McDonald's drive-thru, or you could cook them a healthy meal. We've always opted to try to stay healthier, give them healthy choices at home. And as a family, we've tried to stay active. We're always playing outside in the backyard. We're always going for hikes and bike rides. And we just always try to teach a healthy balance.
Yeah. And as a trainer, do you think that's played a role in how you've kept your kids healthy? Because I know you were done training even before you started working with me.
Yeah. I mean, I started training before I had my kids, took a mini hiatus to raise the kids and came back. We've always we've always tried to set a good example for the kids. I've told you in the past, I never wanted to be that mom who couldn't play with her kids. And I never wanted my kids to not be able to play because they were not feeling good. They had no energy. They're tired. Something hurts because they don't use it. We just always tried to keep active. And I hope my kids see what we've done for them. And, you know, they know I train with you and I work at the gym and I work out all the time and just try to set a good example for them.
Love that. And we're going to turn that same question over to you, Amy. So tell us a little bit about, I know you have 2 kids. Same question,
I do.
how you've kept them healthy and what are some implications from being a parent's perspective?
Sure. I have 18-year-old twins who just started college. My daughter is actually type 1 diabetic, so it's been super important for us to, you know, be careful about our diet and what we're eating. So that's played a huge part in that for us always. And like I said, I had struggled with obesity throughout my life. And one of the motivations for me to lose weight is to be healthy for my kids and to set a good example for them and to be able to be around for them for a very long time and to be able to do stuff with them.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. It's important. And Nate, 5 kids. So you win with the most, man. I'm just going to be upfront with everybody. As everyone knows, I have no kids. So I'm really going to stay away from this question as a parent. But Nate, tell us a little bit about the same question as from a parent's perspective. And then we're going to start really diving into that nitty gritty after this. So
Sure.
Go for it, buddy.
Well, and full disclosure, so I have 2 older boys from my first marriage, and they're now, one is actually done with college, and the other one is in the middle of school at University of Georgia. But and then in my second marriage, I had 3 girls. So now so I feel like I've had almost like 2 lifestyles. I've had the boys and going through that, raising them, and now going through raising girls. And let me tell you, that's completely different for sure.
Allie's over here just like nodding her head back and forth.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean, I don't know if it's just because I'm a guy, but hey, I'll take the boys any day of the week. You can.
I agree with you. I have one of each, so yeah.
The emotional stuff that goes along with girls is it's a lot tougher for me as a dad to try to deal with. But I love them and they're great, and it's a really fun experience getting to see both of those dynamics. But as far as the eating and things, trying to provide a good meal and a good lifestyle as far as eating goes, for us it's just about what's around, what you keep in the house, and like what Allie was alluding to earlier, that being that good example. When you're eating right and you've got the right things in the house and that's what's around, then they're naturally going to flock to that. Whereas vice versa, if you've got the junk food around and it's always there and available, then that's of course what they're going to flock to.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more. And I want our audience to get a little understanding. I never read off of things, but I think this is important to break down. I looked up current stats through the CDC website to get an idea of how prevalent this is in our society in the US. So for children and adolescents aged 2 to 19 years, the prevalence of obesity was 18.5% and affected about 13.7 million children and adolescents. Obesity prevalence was 13.9 from 2 to 5. 2 to 5-year-olds. 18.4 between 6 and 11, and 20.6 from 12 to 19 years old. That actually blows my mind. We're talking huge numbers. So I'm going to give a little backstory, then I'm going to turn this into a question. But I'll never forget, one day I was at a restaurant. It was one of those takeout places. And there was this couple, and the woman had an infant, a child that couldn't speak or anything like that. We're talking must have been less than 6 months old. She went over to the soda machine with a giant cup, filled it up with Coca-Cola, and was feeding her kid Coke. So the question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to start right with you, Allie, is this a respect? Why would a parent do this? Is it lack of education? Is it thinking that the child wants something that's that high in sugars and not knowing? What would a reason be that a parent would do something like this. To me, that was eye-opening. So I just wanted to get a different perspective because obviously I don't have kids. So break it down from a parent perspective.
I can't even answer that because we've never kept soda in the house because we try, like Nate said, if it's available, they're going to want it. We don't keep that in my house. Maybe it's just the normal for that parent to drink soda, not water. I mean, our go-to in my house has always been water. But if your go-to in your household growing up is always soda, aren't you going to keep passing that down? I can't wrap my head around that because I can't imagine.
Yeah, it just kind of blows my mind looking into it. And Amy, I'm going to take this question and I'm going to phrase it a little differently for you because I want to turn it up a little bit. But as a parent, right? I know you heavily involved into working for mental health. So what are the implications of not caring for kids' diet as far as in the mental health goes? So especially if you can break it down by age group, is there a difference between if you're seeing 5, 6, 7-year-olds compared to the 18, 19, 20-year-olds are the kids taking responsibility when they're hitting that 18-year age, or is it just they don't know better? Do they blame their parents? What do you hear from in your sessions based upon dealing with this?
Well, I mean, I think for younger kids, up until like maybe 12, 13 years old, it's, your parents give you what they think is going to comfort you, right? And then after that, they kind of see the implications of that. And that's when, they start thinking about the long-term effects. And by that point, take soda, for example. If you're giving your child soda when they're little and then, when they're a little bit older, realize, hey, they're gaining weight or, this isn't healthy, they shouldn't be having it, and try and take it away. It's that much harder, right? Because you've set that precedent.
So at what point, Nate, would a parent kind of step in here and say, hey, when does it come responsibility of the parent to start taking control of your kids' nutrition and activity levels and start putting that sign up, like, what's going on here? Is it a parent's responsibility? And at what point should they step in?
I mean, I think at the initial stages, it's all the parents' responsibility. Like you were talking about that statistic from the 2 to 5-year-olds or whatever it was. I mean, that's all parent. I mean, the kid is not making that decision at that point. But like Amy was saying, once they hit the adolescence, once puberty starts to hit, once they start to realize and start paying attention to their body and the changes going on with their body, then they begin to become in control of what they're eating and what they're taking in. And that's when you'll see a lot of the eating disorders start to develop. Mm-hmm. And that's when you'll see a lot of that body image, particularly for young women, really begin to identify or come to terms with a lot of that. And if they've had a lot of negative behaviors, a lot of negative patterns up to that point, then that really kind of sets them up for negative behavior patterns, maybe in the opposite way, but still just not, or continuing to go down that line of, eating a bag of Doritos like it's no big deal, taking down a 2-liter of soda. But going back to your point about the soda with the little kids, I think that seeing a mom fill a bottle or something with soda is more the outlier than the norm. Where I see it much more of an issue is like with the juices and the Capri Suns and all of that. And like my youngest loves apple juice. She loves it. I mean, that's her favorite thing to drink, but I water it down 50-50 because there's just so much sugar in that juice. I think that's what a lot of times where the parents fail is they don't realize a lot of the stuff that they're giving there. You think apple juice, hey, it's fruit, it's good, but you don't realize that there's so much sugar in that juice.
Yeah, I want to branch off of that right away. And it's actually funny. Allie and I were talking about this yesterday. The same thing with the juice. And I'm going to say what I said to her. I don't know if personally, my parents are probably going to kill me, but I used to drink orange juice like it was water. And I'm talking about, I would take a gallon of orange juice, and sometimes I drink that in a day. I want you to think about that for a second. I never knew growing up that orange juice was bad for you. I never knew that it was the fiber that was important. I just assumed, hey, this says 100% juice. that means it's good for you. I didn't know until I really got into this world that that's not necessarily true. You could take an orange and squeeze it and drink that fresh. I mean, that might be a little better than pasteurized, but it's still not good for you because you're not getting the fiber out of it. So is it the lack of education for the parents? Or is it breaking down? Allie, what do you think? What do you really think that comes from?
I think, like you said, people see it's 100% juice. It must be healthy. I think that's what people, like Nate said, we always water their juice down. We always made it bubbly by adding the water, and we never gave them the straight juice. But I would have to say lack of education.
And what's a better way to educate the parents to help teach them to raise their kids? Because if you want to look at a controversial topic, anything with children.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to tell parents how to parent is probably one of the hardest things for any topic, because no one wants to listen to you and they say they're my kids. Be quiet. So what do you think I want to take it as a trainer. How would you approach that? I was just going to stick to Allie, then I'll go right to you, Nate.
As a trainer, read labels. Read labels. Don't just see it says 100% juice must be good for you. Read the actual label. See what's actually in it and make a smarter choice. Grab the orange, eat the orange. Grab the apple, eat the apple. And cut it with water so you're at least diluting some of the sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nate, want to take that same question?
Yeah. I think that I had a really profound moment there and I just kind of lost it. I think it comes down to, no, it was because of your comments that made me think of it. It was personal responsibility. At the end of the day, it's what you're doing and your habits. When they become teenagers, they're not going to listen to what you have to say. But when they're growing up, they're going to do what you do. They're going to follow the behavior patterns you follow. So if you're taking care of yourself, if you're taking those adequate steps, it can't help but rub off on them. I think that's a great place to start.
I'm going to ask you the hardest question.
Okay, great.
Because this is way more mental health than anything else out there. So I really want to, this is something that is a personal belief of mine, and it's scary to think about. So is there truth behind a parent who isn't happy with themselves, in essence, where they don't care about their health, they don't care about really anything else, that they kind of want their child to be in that same boat? If you kind of know where I'm going with this, it's that essence where you see it, a parent who is it lack of education, or maybe it's even more cynical, where they kind of want their kids, because so they have familiarity with it, to be in that same boat that they're in.
Well, I mean, I think it even goes a lot deeper than that. I think you can look at it from two different ways. When maybe you haven't had the greatest experience growing up, or your parents didn't, show you a healthy lifestyle, or, kind of lead by example in that way. You can look at it in, like I said, two different ways. You can say, okay, well, I want to take my experience and do better and flip it around and be better for my kids. Or you can say, well, you know what, this is the way that I grew up and I was fine, or seemingly fine. But I think you're right. I think in terms of mental health and maybe depression and body image and not feeling good about yourself. Yeah. I mean, I think we can certainly pass that down to our kids.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And I'm going to ask a question, and whoever wants to answer this one is more than welcome to, because it is, again, another really hard question. At what point is it child abuse? And I mean that as an essence where a kid is too young to know. I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm talking about infants, 2 to 5 year olds, that range. But at what point would someone take a step back and say, this is child abuse because you're setting your kid up to now get like the range of type 2 diabetes in kids? It's never been a thing until my generation. So we need to realize that we're setting them up for failure for the rest of their lives. It's the same thing as maybe not straight away implications as keeping your kids in a hot car or anything like that, where we don't
Right.
think about it. It's not like anyone wants to purposely hurt their kids, but I think it's a point where they don't realize what they're doing could potentially be child abuse. So anyone want to raise their hand and answer this question? It's a tough one.
It is a tough
I
one.
don't think it's child abuse.
You don't think so?
No.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether I would necessarily think
slippery
it's child abuse either, because I don't think. I mean, like I said, when children are very young and they're crying, and you have a crying toddler who wants, candy or whatever, it's, you think you're doing something to comfort your child in that moment. I mean, and you don't see the implications maybe until later. Unfortunately, we're seeing it more and more early now, but I don't think most parents are doing this intentionally to hurt their children. I think a lot of it is they just are doing what they think is the best choice in the moment, and not maybe realizing that it's not.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, though, there has to be that point. It's the same thing with a hot car scenario, keeping the windows
Right.
closed. It's not on purpose. It's, I ran into the grocery store and just lost track of mine. No parent ever said, yeah, I purposely trapped my kid in the car in 300-degree weather. And like, that's never the case. It's always accidental. You never, ever want to purposely put harm on your kids, ever. But there has to be a point where we have to say, hey, this might be considered child abuse. At what point? When you have a 5-year-old who's 200 pounds and is type 2 diabetic,
Yeah.
like, what is that point? Is there any time that we have to say, hey, wake up and look what you're doing? Nate, do you think there's
maybe
any
neglect
point?
might be a better word?
Yeah.
word
Neglect?
for it,
Yeah, which is a form of abuse.
as opposed to
I mean,
abuse,
that's-
because
So if neglect is a form
it
of
becomes
abuse,
then
go for it, Nate.
if it's identified as abuse, then it really becomes, okay, well, now where are you taking that? Okay, well, what quantifies as abuse? Number one, how far down that path do you go? And then two, okay, so what's the repercussions for that? You're going to remove a child from her parents because of she feeding her kid Coke? I mean, I think feeding a child Coke is horrible. I think it's horrendous, but I'm not prepared to take a child away from her mother because of that.
Right.
So
No,
it's
I think
just,
it has to be.
It's care. You just got to be careful.
And there has to be education. Like Ali said, we have to read labels, and, we have to know what we're giving our kids.
I'm not saying, though, like, I understand giving a kid Coke. I understand going out for dessert. I understand all that. And I'm not saying that is. I'm just talking about neglect to the point where it gets to an extreme. I just want to talk, like, hit that extreme mark where it's constant. Yeah, it's perfectly okay. Your kid does, like, hits a home run in baseball and you go out for ice cream. Like,
Right.
yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way to kind of go out as a family and engage yourself. I'm talking about to the point where it's every single day.
Hitting a drive-through because it's easy, it's convenient. They make it convenient and fun packaging for kids, and
Well, that's it too. Yeah. And we live in such a busy lifestyle now that, it's hard. It's hard.
So what's the best way? Because then we're going to get off the parent topic. I'm going to go around a little round robin here. In your mind, give us the way to help fix it from a parent perspective of what we can do, what society can do. If there's anything that we can help as parents, try to help curb this epidemic, but strictly from a parent perspective. So Allie, we're going to start with you, then go Amy and Nate.
it's just being aware. As a parent, I want to know what I'm giving my kids. It's just education, being aware, reading labels, and making smart choices. I'm going to buy my kids snacks. I'm not going to not, but I'm not going to buy them the Doritos and Oreos. I'm going to buy them a healthier option and let them make the choice. It's just, as parents, we just need to be aware and educated.
Yeah, and then Amy, same question.
Right. I totally agree with Ali. And like I said earlier, it has to be education. We have to learn how to read labels. We have to make smarter choices. And it doesn't always have to be the harder choice. I mean, I think that making the healthier choice can be just as easy as making the unhealthy choice.
And then Nate.
As a parent of very hard-headed kids who don't like to listen to the things I tell them, I think the best thing that you can do is lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
The more that you're doing the right things, the more that you're putting the right things into your body, and they see the result of that, then it may not sink in at first, but over the long haul, over the long period, it can't help but have an impact on them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I want to jump into one of the questions we were asked before we hopped on, because there was an answer posted on the Betty by Lewis. He was saying, besides appearances, what would be a narrower indicator for new parents to take their child to the doctor to get checked for diabetes? We actually had someone I knew answer it, Tracy, who excessive urination, but that's got to be hard to check to see if a kid has excessive urination. I mean, that to me, how do you know your kid's going to the bathroom too much? Are they drinking too much water? At what point are you're not paying attention 24/7 to what your kid's doing or what they're doing in school? So I don't know if any of you want to answer this question directly.
Regular physicals.
Regular physicals.
Really, that's going to identify most everything. I mean, if you're doing that regular routine, you're going to know.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And to summarize the parent, based upon what all of you were saying, I think what it all comes down to is education. And if I were to implement anything or talk about anything, I think it's important that as a society, maybe we do some more educating on parents, because I don't necessarily think it's parents' faults. I just want to point that out there. It has a lot to do with what they were taught growing up, especially that generation that has kids now. You look, like I've always talked about, back from the 70s, where they came out with a landmark study saying that sugar is good for you. And that was done by the USDA and sponsored by Coca-Cola. So no one really knew. You want to talk about things, they said it was all fat. So what do parents do? They stopped feeding their kids fat. And they said, oh, this will be healthy, because they really didn't know any better. So I think over time, we're going to see a shift change personally, because I know myself and the people younger than me really see the importance of this. So I'm just going to hope for the better for the future of that and kind of move on from the next thing. Speaking of education, this is our perfect jump into schools. And this one, I love this topic. I wish we had someone on the school board on here, but great to get it from the parents' perspective. So, Allie, we're going to go right to you first, just on schools. What is the school's responsibility to help educate your kids in particular?
Well, one, right in the lunchroom, offer them a healthy choice. We've talked about this before. They don't have any healthy choices if they want to buy lunch. Why not? And if they want to buy water, it's $2 for a water bottle. But chocolate milk comes free. Like right there, offer our kids healthy lunches.
Amy, if you think that schools offered healthy lunches, do you think the kids would choose the healthy lunches over the unhealthy option? What do you think how the kids would react to seeing the healthier options at school?
I think some of them would. I think there's always going to be those kids who are going to choose the soda over water or chocolate milk, over water. But I think a lot of kids, especially now, because like you said, we're all more aware of it now. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about, setting the example. And if you didn't have a good example growing up, but now we do have that example, and we are learning.
Yeah, we actually had a comment thrown on here. No, Corinne really doesn't think that people will kind of follow those regulations on there. And I don't disagree or agree with anybody, because I really don't know the answer to it.
Even just get rid of the vending machines. Why are they selling Doritos and chips and just junk food? Give them a healthy option in that vending machine.
Nate, what do you think of this? You got 5 kids, they went to college, some of them are still about to go into school. What do you think the best way a school can kind of adapt to it?
Well, I think it's really tough because they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because we identify, okay, they need healthy meals to eat. And they don't need all the junk food. But then if you give them just the healthy meals, they don't eat it. And I've been to my kids' school, my kids' elementary school, the last couple of years doing the turkey dinners and the banquet things, you know, where you go through and you eat their cafeteria food. And it's tough because you know we want to limit their sodium. We don't want to give them diabetes. We want to limit the sugar and everything, but so they don't flavor or season or do much of anything with the healthy food that they're preparing. I'll give you a great example: green beans. I use garlic, salt, and dried onions and a few little things here and there in my green beans. I let them simmer for an hour, and they're delicious. My kids mow through green beans. It's our most popular vegetable that we have. If you go to the school and you eat those green beans, they're horrendous. There's no salt. They haven't been cooked. They've been, you know, just thrown together. It's just, and I can't eat those green beans, and I love green beans and I try to eat healthy. So it's like, but then they're in the position where, well, we can't put too much salt because now we're overloading them with sodium and there's all these regulations that they have to try to stick by. But in my opinion, I feel like, well, if you cook good food, being a Southern guy, loving to cook and all that kind of stuff, you know, you season the things. Yeah, they may not be as healthy as they should be. And yeah, you're probably losing some nutritional value through that process, but it's still better than a bag of Doritos. It's still better than what they're getting out of the vending machine. And at least now they don't have a negative connotation on green beans. Now they see a green bean and they want to go eat it. When my kids first saw green beans at the cafeteria, that was the first thing they went for. But then they ate one and it was like, well, no, I'm never going to eat one of these again because they're terrible.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little, I think I was the closest one of all of us to come out of school recently. So I'm going to give some perspective and kind of go off of a couple of the comments we're getting. But I could tell you growing up that in my cafeteria, it was like Nate was saying is so true. The food was horrible. And my dad is a great cook. I love his cooking, and he would make the same things, and it would be so much better than what I would get at the cafeteria. It was actually horrendous, the quality of food we received. And I think this has a lot to do with the way our schools have the certain laws that have been passed. And I want to talk about them and get responses off of them. So I think it was President Truman passed a law in 76 stating a little more of a guidance to help keep foods a little healthier. So that might have been something that you guys thought, but they put a little bit precautions in trying to keep things healthier that way, and things never really came from it until recently. A lot of people know that Michelle Obama had a big fight to keep kids active and keep kids healthy in schools. It was her biggest proponent she was doing as her husband being a president. So a lot of people don't know, unless you do research into it, like I unfortunately have, is the big corporation companies actually fought against Michelle Obama and lobbied against her. And you probably noticed that about a couple months into her campaign of keeping food healthier in schools, that disappeared and it turned into just physical activity. It's because the lobbying went against her and she had to pull back because she's being threatened with lawsuits about how to get these programs. The schools are saying it's going to be too expensive. These companies are saying that they're going to go out of business. And it's just a lot of things that really prevented the schools from offering these healthier options. Some do, but a lot don't now. And a big name group, the Pelican Group, which a lot of people don't know about, actually, the study everyone jokes about, it's not a study, sorry, it was a lawsuit. They were filing against serving vegetables. And they said, no, we serve vegetables. We serve pizza. They go, what do you mean? Yeah, the pizza has tomato paste on it, and tomato's a veggie. So therefore, we serve veggies, and this is how we hit our quota. So what would your response after knowing this as a parent and knowing how the schools are kind of work? What would your reaction to all this? All this information is throughout you, Allie. Why don't we start with you?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business and they want to make a profit, and they're going to try to make a profit the cheapest way they can. But I don't think our kids should have to sacrifice that. I mean, my kids sometimes just want a wrap or a grilled chicken or a salad, and they can't get that at school.
Yeah, it's
forgot the question.
It's okay. Amy, we're going to throw that same question over to you. What's your reaction to all, like, knowing that stuff? I don't know if you knew or didn't know any of that.
I didn't know. And I mean, to me, it's sad that the kids have to suffer because of this, you know, because it is, like Ali said, a business, you know, and they can't get the healthier options.
So if you were in charge, Nate, and somebody said, hey, what would your final reaction to be as the superintendent of the school? Are we going to increase our budget to try to get healthier options to kids? Are we just going to do what the company says and lose out on potentially, we're talking billions of dollars, by the way, not just a few thousand? What would you do?
You do not want me in charge. I can tell you that for sure. No, I think the concept that Jamie Oliver came up with, that he really worked hard on getting good quality, because you can give them decent. I mean, the money's there. Yeah, but there's plenty of profit to be made. And I don't know anything about the corporate lobbyists, any of that kind of stuff. That's all above my pay grade. All I can speak to is like what's going. If you're having issues in your local school and your kids are not getting fed right, then you need to take responsibility for that and step in and get involved. And there was a really interesting documentary on like a PBS show, and I apologize, I don't know the name of it, but it was actually up there in the Northeast. It may have been in New Jersey. I can't remember exactly, but it was the process of them getting a new vendor in, and the experience and all the struggles that they went through to get this new vendor to provide a better quality meal. You talked about wraps. Ali mentioned wraps. That was one of the biggest things that were a popular item that they were adding to that menu, and they were able to, and it's just a fascinating process. You see all the bureaucracy behind it. You see that how you have to get everybody on board, because it's not just the principals and the people that are the corporations. It's the cafeteria workers. It's the people out there on the front line that are actually doing the work, that are preparing the meals. How much are you making their job easier? What is you have to get their buy-in, and the process they went through to get everybody along that process to line up and to make this change was really, really difficult. So it's certainly not easy to happen, but if it's important enough to you, if you're willing to go after it, then you can make that change.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I know schools, and I kind of want to go off of something Corinne was saying. She said the kids throw them out. So that actually brings me into my next topic with it, is education for the kids. Now, we talk about being educated, being able to make an informed decision. I could tell you all right now, I'm sure you don't know with all your kids, health class, by the way, after the 3 years of high school we had, because our school was a little different, it was only 10, 11, 12, was half a year, one of those years. All right. And we had to learn about everything in that half a year. And I can tell you right now, the stuff I was taught in health class it's so wrong. It kind of blows my mind. Even on top of that, the topic of nutrition was a week long. So, and you think the kids are paying attention? I can tell you right now, no one was paying attention. Everyone kind of went like the way we do this school. And then even on top of that, a lot of people don't know this about me, but back through my struggle of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, because we all go through it, I actually went back to school to get my master's degree for PE, physical education. And I wanted to see if I can get involved, which is why I know so much about this topic, to kind of help change it from a kid perspective. And I learned something very interesting that they started teaching was in Minnesota. They ran a study because they were curious the implications of physical education based on education grades, academic grades. They were able to show there was a 25% increase in the kids' academics if they had PE before that class. On top of that, there was a 22% increase if they had PE at least once a day. Now, I don't know about you and your schools, and Nate, I would love to hear about how they do it in Georgia, but for us, PE was every other day. And even on top of that, from what I've heard from multiple parents, is PE is now, due to COVID, go walk around the track with a mask on, and that's your physical education for the week.
And
so
don't stand near anybody.
And don't stand near
10
everybody.
10 feet away, so you don't even get the social aspect.
So talk about that for your kids right now, Allie. Just how would you lobby the school that you want to get more physical education involved in the schools? I'm sure for Mount Sinai, is it still every other day?
Well, since COVID, they do the hybrid, and my high school kid, she only goes 2 days a week. So she only has gym one of those days. So it's up to us to keep her active. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's go play volleyball in the backyard. Let's do something. So right now she has gym 1 day a week, walking the track with a mask on, 10 feet apart from everyone else.
That's her physical activity.
That's it. And that's why, as a parent, like, we keep her active. But what about the parents that don't? That's all their kid is doing.
That actually
is sad
and blows my mind in so many ways. Amy, after hearing the stats coming out of Minnesota as regards to increased academic performance, especially in things people struggle with, which, by the way, one of the biggest topics for a lot of people is math. A lot of people are really bad at math, but what they showed is they had that increase if they put math after PE. Because as you know, being a trainer, when you work out, you're able to learn things easier. You get your brain kind of fired up and going.
Right.
So how would you react to something like this? And how could you lobby to the schools? I know your kids just graduated high school, but talk a little bit about it.
Well, I mean, now it's hard because, talking about PE in schools, they can't even change into workout clothes for gym because they're not allowed to use the locker room or their gym lockers. And not only is PE now, maybe we'll walk around the track, 6 feet apart from each other, but a lot of it is like worksheets or, like general knowledge stuff, not actual physical activity. So, I mean, in order to lobby the schools to get more physical activity, I would kind of bring this information and as a trainer say to them, look, I know firsthand that, you get the blood pumping, you get moving, you learn better, you're more awake, you're more aware. So it's a better idea, but it's hard right now. It's hard right now.
And Nate, I want to know about how they do things in Georgia.
Well, thankfully, as far as COVID goes, like you said, you were able to come, pretty sure you were able to come down here and take some vacation time during all of this craziness. So for the record, I want kids out of masks and in school as fast as humanly possible. That's just my personal belief. I know that tends to offend some people, but let me just start with that. Getting back to just where we were before, I think is the first thing that we desperately need to do. If you look at the mortality rates for kids, it's basically non-existent. So like, and we're seeing that now that kids are getting back in school, they're not dying. They're, some are getting, you are seeing some kids test positive and there's, certainly some things to deal with, but I want them back in school and I want them doing their regular thing as much as possible. But what COVID did for me and my family and what it made me realize is that in all aspects, you talked about your health class. You got everything that you were supposed to learn in health class in one semester, 1 year, and that was it for all of high school. So what it's made me realize is that we can't depend on the school to do these things. So I can't depend on the school to make sure that my kid is getting the activity that they need. Like Allie was saying, we have to go out there and make sure that they're getting it for us. I send my kids outside as soon as they get home. That's one of our first things is we don't jump on electronics. We don't go do anything. We don't even jump on homework. We go out there and run the legs out and we go get some physical activity. And I can't speak highly enough about how important. I agree with you 100%. It should be a daily activity in schools. And not only should that be a daily activity, but some form of like a meditative practice, some form of let's have a little calming opportunities to bring our levels down. Like we need some of those highs and some of those lows. And I think both of those elements are missing in our school. Yeah.
And I want to jump off in that mental part of you were talking about school, actually. So increased rates of ADD. I'm not talking about ADHD because that you can do a brain scan and kind of get an answer whether someone has ADHD or not. But ADD, is it ADD for most people because the rates have skyrocketed, or maybe it's because the kids aren't getting enough physical activity? They can go through a whole school day, right? They sit on the bus to go to school. My bus ride was an hour each way, by the way. So that's 2 hours plus the time I'm in school, which was 7 to 3. And then you go home and what do? You go turn on the TV or do your homework because the teacher is on top of this, especially where you go. Here's 3 hours of homework to squeeze in before you go to bed. So that kid can go days without getting any physical activity at all. And maybe that's what's causing our skyrocketing rates of ADD. What do you think of that kind of implication, Allie?
I totally agree with what you're saying. Pre-COVID, we tried to keep our kids involved in school sports. Join a team, do something, pick something to do after school, whether it's track, tennis, soccer, a club, whatever. Now, COVID, we can't really do that because they're not offering that. But I see my kid gets home and she had to sit and be quiet with her mask on all day. Of course, she's going to have extra energy and she's going to act out a little bit and run amok. And, you have to let them be kids.
Yeah, you've definitely got to let them be kids in some aspects. I know growing up, my parents were very good about. My dad actually got rid of cable when we were growing up because he was so pissed when he saw it watching it with the sun up. He would scream at us. And don't tell him, but I'm kind of grateful. So because that taught me like, hey, I didn't rely on all this awesome stuff. We had 12 channels growing up.
Gosh.
Think about that, guys. Most people have hundreds now. We have 12.
Imagine what I had then.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, me too.
There was no Netflix. There was no Hulu.
Nope.
It was the basic 12 channels. And then at the end of the middle of the night, it was those like TV ads trying to sell things.
Yeah.
So, but Nate, do you think there's any correlation between the rise of ADD with lack of activity? And if so, is it up to a parent to go seek help from a mental counselor, or is it maybe to go straight into getting that kid to do more physical activity?
Well, I think it starts with the parent probably, but yeah, I certainly believe ADD has got way overdiagnosed, particularly in the last about 20 years ago when you first saw it hit and you saw the Ritalin prescriptions going out like clockwork. I think that was tragic, and I think that what the dampening of souls that we did with that was horrible. But yeah, and a great way to tell is video games. If a kid can sit in front of a video game for more than 15, 20 minutes, he does not have ADD. I'm sorry. It's just, facts are fact, but yeah, certainly there is a correlation. There have been some kids in our neighborhood that are about the same age as my children, when all this COVID stuff, when even really before that. And my kids play outside. We have a great situation where they're able to kind of just roam the neighborhood and they've got some friends in the neighborhood that they play around with, and it's a great setup. But there are other kids in this neighborhood that I have not seen in 9 months. Not once. I mean, I assume they're still alive and I assume everything's fine, but not one time have I seen them outside doing anything. I mean, again, I'm sure they're leaving the house and doing something at some point, but I just think to myself, those 3 boys, man, what's going on? What are they doing? How are they getting by? And what does their world look like right now? It breaks my heart. I can't imagine.
And even if you are on the foresight of COVID, where you don't want your kids hanging out with other people, I always want to be empathetic to the other side. I think it's important. You could still have your kids work out or play games with each other. Let's say you have 2 kids, like they don't have to hang out with the neighbors. They're still hanging out with their brother or sister. Get out with the parents. If you have an only child, why don't you go do something active with them? Hey, that would be great for both of you. So there's still that way you can do it without having to worry about running around, being exposed, whatever, however you feel about it. Don't bring them inside and keep them there. Get them outside, because even just being outside is great for your mental health, and it helps boost vitamin D3 exposure. You're pointing towards your nose, so you got to. What are you implying there, Nate?
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I'm such a big proponent of lifestyle design and connecting with the woods, and like I'm a trail runner. I'm an ultra runner. That's my thing.
I love that.
I mean, I had a trail race this morning, as a matter of fact. But even if you're not like, some people, well, I'll trip and fall. Okay, fine. Just go walk around in the woods. Just go take your kid. If you have children, go walk. There is a park within 15 to 20 minutes of your house, I promise you, that you can go walk around in the woods. Take your mask off, go out there, get some fresh air, go look at the squirrels doing their thing, go watch, there's something about that to me that I think we desperately, desperately need.
I totally agree. I go for my mental walks almost all the time, walking around the neighborhood, because it's so important. Like, you got to get out once in a while, just be outside. It helps with sleeping is one of the most important things. And being outside in natural sunlight actually corrects your circadian rhythm and can help you sleep better. I did a whole podcast episode on this, but just to sum it up, it's, you see the sunrise, you see the sunset, that's going to help you sleep better. And a lot of people say they watch TV, or the kids watch TV because it makes their eyes hurt. Your eyes hurt because it's staring at light and it thinks it's high noon. So yeah, you might be able to fall asleep, but you're not actually asleep. You're not in deep REM sleep at that point. People don't realize that. They always say, well, I'm a light sleeper. No, you're a light sleeper because you were watching blue light exposure through the roof. So you're not actually sleeping. You're probably waking up tired, so then you don't want to do anything the next day. And then you continue that activity, and before you know it, you're not recovering. You're gaining weight, because we all know sleep just itself, if you were to fix that, can help with weight problems. And that goes with the kids too. And kids, which another topic with schools and talk about health and everything, is sleeping. Kids need more sleep than adults do. And this always blew my mind. Like, we're stuck doing homework late at night. We're doing A, B, C, D, E, but we have to wake up before the sun. My bus came at 5:15 in the morning.
Ouch.
I want you all to think about that. As a kid growing up, where kids need 9-10 hours of sleep, that's just proof. They've proved that over and over and over again. You're having the bus come at 5:15 in the morning. Reasoning for the schools to always back the other side is because they want to get the sports done after school, and they don't want to do it when it's dark. But why put the whole population of kids at the risk for the few that do sports? Anyone want to kind of jump into why they think that's the case? You guys are all kind of looking at me. I would just pick. Amy, go for it.
Why do I think it's the case that they make the older kids get up earlier to do sports? Or what?
Yeah, why are schools setting these time limits on kids to not get enough sleep, when we've seen over and over and over again how important it is for kids to get enough sleep? It blows my mind, and I really mean that.
I think it also has to go with, parents being concerned about their kids, the older kids being home to watch the younger kids, their work schedules. I think that there's a lot of things in play there.
I mean, look at COVID right now, where most kids are home, right? We're learning how to adjust with them. I think a lot of people have kind of at least found some normalcy with it. It's a hard word to use during these times, but we're figuring it out. The kids get to sleep a little better, but now they're getting more screen time. What can you do during COVID? I'm going to pick this one to Nate. Specifically right now, virtual learning. Talk a little bit about what you think parents should be doing with virtual learning with their kids, and how they can benefit them to keep the kids healthier.
I think the virtual learning has exposed a lot of things to us. It's exposed to what our teachers are actually going through and what the experiences that they're having with our kids. And then it's also exposing us to what we need to be doing on our end. I actually wrote a little blog post about kind of digital learning and getting through COVID-19. I think there's a couple of practices. I think there's a couple of things that you can do. I think one of the first ones, right, and thankfully with school being back in place, a lot of that has happened for us, and that's creating a schedule and having specific times for specific things. And that's not just the math and the reading and all the work. It's like it's scheduling electronics time. Like saying, okay, because look, let's all be real. They're gonna be on electronics. They're all gonna need to have that time. So let's allot for it. Let's say, okay, from 5 to 7, that's your time. That's your window of opportunity. And I think the more structure and the more of a schedule that we can provide them with, the more they feel at ease and comfortable and like knowing what's coming. And one of the things we started doing through all of this is doing a little menu. We actually started adding that as part of our thing, like just knowing what's for dinner. It has a settling effect, I think, that makes this when it can be a very difficult times, especially for them trying to understand all this, at least that provides some normalcy and some consistency and make them feel okay about the whole situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Getting a kid's schedule and
Yeah. I
Hey,
mean,
guess what?
science has
That's what we do.
proven
Yeah,
that
go for
science
it.
has proven that schedules and routine have a positive effect on kids.
And I'm sure that can have a positive effect on the mental health too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see that with people you're getting, just get himself on
Oh,
a routine.
absolutely. Absolutely. Not only for kids, adults too.
Everyone. And I want to turn this, I know we've gone a little over on that topic, but I want to go to the last one just to make sure we get it in here. And this is society. And what I mean about society's responsibility, I take it as the government, I take it as our norms, and I want to give examples to kind of explain a little bit more what I'm talking about. I'm going to use a funny topic because I love my humor. At least I think I'm funny. But the song All About That Bass bothers me to an extreme because we're normalizing being obese. And I don't think it's okay to normalize a sickness. I think it's something that should be addressed, and you kind of see it more and more and more. And it's getting normalized with our kids. So what responsibility does society have in order to help our kids for the better future? Because kids are our future, regardless of what anyone says. Allie, you want to start with this one?
I will say that song, I take it different. I take it as she's comfortable with her body and she's confident. She doesn't want to be a stick figure who's starving herself.
Agreed.
So I take it that way as opposed to the way you see it.
Yeah, I guess I just see it differently.
I just see it as finally embrace your curves. I'm not saying she's not healthy or she is healthy because I really don't have her stats in front of me, but body confidence.
I do agree with the body confidence, and it's something important, especially what they've shown more and more, which might surprise a couple of people, is so Nate, you have more boys out of everyone here by one. So with boys, right? The rising rates of anorexia and bulimia has been extremely prevalent in our society. And a lot of people know it's the girls. And that's been kind of a society norm. We know girls generally struggle because they see pictures in magazines and whatever. This has become more prevalent in boys than ever before. It's almost a 50-50 split. And a lot of people don't know that. So you have any way to address this for your boys in particular of where you've seen them growing up, if they've experienced or they know anyone that's had any body image problems?
I think all adolescents, when they start going through that, like especially that 15 to 16 range, I think they all become very body conscious. I think anytime where they can get obsessed over like social media and some of those images that are out there, that's when it tends to get unhealthy. As far as I was surprised at that statistic that you said that that's so prevalent with boys. I always, like you said, just kind of stereotypically associated that with girls. But I think the best thing that you can do for boys or girls is having them involved in an activity, like Ali was saying, particularly with sports. When they're involved in a sport, then they don't have as much time to get caught up. Because if you really think about all this body image stuff, and a lot of those disorders come from ego and self-image, and it's all about me. Well, when they're involved in a team sport in particular, they're so caught up in all that. And then not only that, they're burning through so many calories. You know, if you're keeping them running 90 miles an hour, 7 days a week, they're too hungry. They can't, you know, my kid would take a jar of peanut butter to school and it would be gone. He would take a box of, you know, an entire thing of Ritz crackers and it would just be gone. So, you know, when they're exercising, doing all those healthy activities to try to maintain a bulimic lifestyle, that's tough. It's going to be really hard to do.
Then they have less time on social media because they're engaged in a sport that's outside of themselves.
Yeah.
They're on a team.
And Amy, I want to talk about this because I know a lot of parents have kids that hate sports.
Well, I have a lot to say about this, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think while team sports are great. I think as far as body image and anorexia and bulimia goes, one of the things that you have to be aware of and concerned about is the pressure from your teammates, the pressure from your coaches to be a certain size, to be a certain weight. And a lot of it, I've heard a lot of it comes from that. And you know what? Social media is always there, and it does play a huge part in body image. And so I think that, you know, while of course exercise is great, you know, we do have to be aware of that also.
That's a great point. Actually, my oldest son was involved with wrestling.
Sorry.
And that's where you see, that's if I did see any eating disorders or unhealthy eating behaviors associated with young men, it was within wrestling.
Oh yeah.
And you have seen a lot of that change. And kudos to the wrestling community for doing a lot to change a lot of those, because it used to be way worse than it is now. Now they have some very, very strict guidelines in place to keep that from happening. But yeah, I think when you do, to Amy's point, tying it to performance and coaching, that would probably be the most common place for it to surface for sure.
And at what point is it society's responsibility to kind of help change this? Is there any implications? I mean, I want to talk about both sides. You have the anorexic bulimia side, and then you also have the morbidly obese side of this. How can society as a whole kind of fix both these problems and say, hey, it's okay to eat, but hey, be careful of taking it from one extreme to the next? Let's talk about, let's give this one to Allie, then we'll kind of do a round robin on this one.
As we've talked about, moderation, you know, you've got to have a balance in life. If your kids aren't into sports, we've always tried to get them to do something after school, whether it's a club, scouts, or a sport. Do something after school that's just for you, just for fun. I wish the school sports weren't so competitive, because that's where you lose a lot of the kids. If they just had it intramural, just have fun, just a pickup kickball game, just a fun game of soccer, go for a run with your friends. I think they're making it too competitive these days, and that's driving a lot of kids away. I
want to follow up on that just to give personal experience, because I think it plays pretty heavily. I was never obese. I always had the opposite problem, being way too skinny, and I did a whole episode on that. But I ran a 15-30 mile, to give that in perspective, and that's really bad for those that run. I was really, really out of shape, and I tried out for the basketball team, and I was one of 2 kids to get cut. So think about that for a second. I tried to go into sports in the sport world, and unfortunately it took to 10th grade to realize it's something I wanted to do. And then I got cut out of it because they did have that competitive nature of it.
Why couldn't they take 2 more kids? That's what I don't understand. Why is it so competitive? They're kids. Even at 10th grade level, you're still a kid.
It's still a kid. And I think this has a lot to do with, I want to throw this over to Amy to kind of answer that first question, and then throw a little secondary question to it. Competitiveness in sports, right? So we have 2 extremes now. That's how I see it. Everything has to go in extremes for our society, and it always blows my mind. But you have the varsity sports, it's win, 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 win. And then you have, like, I was playing Three Village basketball, was just like anyone could join kind of thing. But there was no winning. It was, hey, you get a participation trophy. Right. And I think that plays a big role too, because then we're programming our kids to lose and not know how to overcome adversity, because to them, everybody wins, right? So where's the median? Where's the moderation of this, Amy? Can you answer this question? Right. Give any advice?
Well, we have to kind of figure out what that balance is, you know? And you're right. It is one extreme or the other. And I feel like it's kind of been overcorrected. You know, that it was that win-win-win mentality. And so, you know, everybody was told that was bad. So now it's okay, well, we're going to give everybody a participation trophy, and everybody's going to be winners. But you're right. What is the happy medium there?
Yeah, because there has to be. I mean, you start giving everyone winning, or you just don't use red pen, which they don't in school anymore, which blows my mind in some places.
Right.
What you start seeing is that these kids don't know, or the millennials, the Gen Z, they just don't know how to, when they get knocked down, because that's what happens in the adult world. Like you get thrown on the ground, beat up, spit on. I think Rocky said it best, nothing hits you harder than life, right? So at what point we have to teach our kids to get back up? And if there's nothing in society pushing them down to teach them how to get back up and get back in the ring.
You know how my kids learned that is actually through martial arts.
Yes, martial arts is awesome. Absolutely
my kids are both junior black belts in karate. That was their big physical activity growing up. And that's where they learned it.
Yeah, it's important to learn that, you keep trying, you keep failing. I own a business, as pretty much everyone knows, but being a small business owner, I can't tell you how many times we fail. And yeah, I know they're Boston saying this on live, but yeah, it happens. We fail on an idea over and over and over and over and over again. But if I'm just going to drop my company because we failed once, we failed twice, we failed 100 times, that doesn't teach me anything, because this can work if I learn how to do it. Wow, my phone wants to hop in. But Nate,
my phone too.
Nate, you have any follow-up to this about what's the media ground? How can we not go from one extreme to the other? What can we help teach our kids, and how can society help implement this?
And it's tough for me because as a triathlete and as an Ironman, like we get a participation trophy. When you finish an Ironman, everybody gets that participation. Now, it's a really hard thing to participate in, but it is, at the end of the day, you just made it to the finish line. You weren't first, you weren't the top 3 or anything like that. So it's tough for me, right? Because I have that dynamic, but I think there's something invaluable, like you were saying before, about winning and losing and keeping score. I think keeping score is really important. Now, if you want to give everybody a participation trophy at the end of the year, that's fine. That's great. I don't really particularly have a problem with that, but keeping score along the way. No, because I teach kids soccer. I'm not a very good soccer coach. We learn a lot through the season, but our win-loss record is horrible. I think I've won probably one game in all my years of coaching. So coming from a loser coach, take this all with a grain of salt. But to Allie's point, what we did was everyone learned their positions. Now, I mean, I'm coaching 9 and 10-year-old girls, and we're not even on the travel team. We're just the little rec team that's, that doesn't go anywhere or do much. So, so we're certainly not at a certain caliber or level, but what we do, and what one of my goals as a coach is, let everyone experience the process, let everyone experience the different positions, let everyone grow and learn and start to figure out, okay, where do they fit in? Where do I excel? And I think now, they don't keep score in our games, but those little girls at the end of every game know exactly what the score was. They know exactly who scored, know exactly who didn't. They know if their team won or if they didn't. Despite the fact that there's no official score. So I think keeping that score and teaching them how to be graceful in victory and how to be graceful in defeat, and learning how to deal with both of those, I think, is an invaluable life skill, particularly with starting your own business.
Yeah, I think it's a very important life skill to kind of pick up. I used to ref basketball, and let me tell you, even if we're not keeping a score, the parents are. Everyone else is. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's for fun. We're teaching their 5-year-olds, but no, it was everyone keeping score anyway. But I want to kind of start wrapping this up and throw it into one final question about society, and then we'll just do a round robin after that. So at what point should the government step in? And I mean that as, at what point should our federal government step in, and maybe it's ban trans fats like they've been trying to do for years and legislation keeps getting pushed, or start making schools implement more PE? At what do you think the government should step in and do something? Or is it strictly, hey, what's out there is out there. It's my responsibility to take control of my kids' actions and myself, and I should know better. And then, of course, through capitalism, if I do that, if the high sugar processed foods don't sell anymore, they'll eventually disappear off the shelves. So government step in, government not step in. At what point should there be a point? Let's start right with you, Allie.
I feel like it's more the parents' responsibility, as I've said all along. I do think that they should be more rules for gym classes and activity and recess and let the kids play. But I think at the end of the day, it's the parents.
End of the day, it's the parents.
But I also think that they should regulate the trans fats and food. But I do think at the end of the day, it's us to teach our kids.
So I'm going to ask you a simple yes or no question. Through, I think it was, don't quote me, Pittsburgh or Philly, one of the P's in Pennsylvania. Corinne would know. But one of the cities, they started taxing soda more. And they put a soda tax, they called it, and then used that to help build parks and recreation centers. Do you think that's something that should be implemented across the U.S.? Or do you think the government should just kind of stay out of it altogether from there?
Still feel like at the end of the day, it's the parents.
So at the end of the day, it's the parents. Amy, we're going to turn both questions over to you. Should the government step in? Yes or no? Is the soda tax a good thing? And at what point, if any, should the government step in?
I agree with Allie that I think at the end of the day, it's the parents. I think the government can give us some good guidelines and should give us maybe more guidelines. But I do agree that at the end of the day, it's the parents' responsibility. As far as the soda tax, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad idea. I don't know, how many states, many cities would go for it, but why not?
They tried doing it in New York, and I believe legislation failed. But I remember a couple of years ago, they were trying to implement in the city the same thing, the soda tax, which I'm going to give my personal opinion, then I'm going to throw this over to Nate. But I love the soda tax. And only because if we could take a tax, even if it's pennies, but they're billion-dollar companies, take a penny off a liter, you're making a lot of money. You use that to build recreation specifically. And I don't mean use it for anything else but health programs. Food in schools maybe get supplemented by the government through the soda tax. Education programs for parents. You have to only use that for resources that help keep our society healthy. You're not getting rid of it, because I do believe it's the parents' choice, but at least it's something to help in return boost that side of it. Nate, I wanted you to answer this question as well, buddy. Go for it.
Awesome. Thank you. So this is going to be a little bit of a hypocritical answer. At least it may appear so at first. So full disclosure, I am libertarian in my way of thinking and in most of my principles. So telling the government to stay out of it, as I think, is a great idea. I don't think that the government should be involved any more than absolutely 100% necessary. So regulating trans fats, any of that kind of stuff, I am not a big proponent of. That being said, in Georgia, in Gwinnett County, where I live, about 10 years ago, they created a program called SPLOST, Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. And it was a 1% sales, like most people have like 6 or 7% sales tax. Well, they increased it in this one county by 1%. So 1 cent out of every dollar. And that was just on sales tax. So to your point about the soda tax, with that money, with that special purpose local option sales tax that has to be voted on and approved by the voters in the county every year, all of that money goes to parks, recreational areas, all of the things exactly like what you were talking about. And because of that, Gwinnett County, where I live, has got one of the best, it was named by Sports Illustrated as one of the best parks and recs communities in the country. And it wasn't based on a soda tax, but it's based on that little sales tax. Now, again, I'm a libertarian in my principles. I don't think the government should be involved in my life any more than they absolutely need to, but I have voted for that tax every year, because I see what it does. I see the benefit that I personally am getting out of it. And it just, to me, is a brilliant way to provide a better lifestyle for me and my family. So if there's a soda tax out there that would serve in that purpose, then I probably would support, because again, it's not the government mandating saying, no, you can't have soda. I'm not about that. But hey, if you're going to choose a negative decision or a not so beneficial decision, then we're going to tax you a little bit more for it, kind of like cigarettes or alcohol or anything else like that. So in that realm, and you use it towards helping other people live a more healthy lifestyle, then I think I'd be okay with that.
Like Corinne's comment, maybe at first, but then it'll go to something else. That's where my mine goes.
Just so people know, and just in general, I don't know if people actually know this about the government doesn't produce money. So
Right.
they don't make money anywhere but through taxing. And they need to tax because they need to pay for our roadways, they need to pay for recreation facilities, anything that's done either on a federal level or on a state level, they have to tax in order to support these kind of programs. Schools, for example, half of your tax for your home goes straight to the schools. Lottery, half of the taxes for lottery goes straight to the schools. So they need to make money in order to have, like, if I told you, Ali, like, you're going to pay for that road, it's a lot harder to digest than just kind of get taxed for things you do. So the government does need to make money in essence. And full disclosure, kind of like Nick's saying, I'm a libertarian as well, so I want to point that out there. Just in general, I do believe the government needs to stay out, but the government does need to make money in order to redistribute the funds, in order to build things. And if they could do it and were regulated kind of in a sense where this has to go towards certain programs and they disclosed where the money was going, I know they say they disclose it, but who really knows? So having it more transparency would really help. I want to answer one of the questions that were posted about diet soda. And Corinne, kind of to answer your point, just to sum this all up, because I know we've gone a little over here. Diet soda is just as bad as regular soda, if not worse, and only because sucralose and your sweeteners, actually what happens in your brain is it's in some cases 10 times sweeter than sugar. So yeah, you're not getting that sugar hit like you would from regular soda, but what's happening is you're training your brain to get used to that high tense, because it still thinks it's getting that sugar. So now actually you're triggering those addiction centers that want sugar. And they ran a huge study showing that people who drink diet soda were way more likely to have higher sugar consumption than those that didn't. Because when you hadn't had regular sugar, you're actually consuming less sugar throughout the day. And you didn't have those cravings. When you start drinking any of that fake stuff, you start kind of notice you start craving sweets in your mouth. You cut that out completely. You cut out all diets and any kind of fake stuff. I hate all of it. So it's kind of just important to take home with you. But there needs to be some location. There needs to be something to step in. And I want to just go around. Last question for all of you. Put them all together. You're talking as a parent standpoint, school standpoint, society standpoint. If you were to sum all this up, guys, one final drive home point. We're going to start with Ali, then go around. What's your take-home message from this episode?
Education. We need to be more educated. We need to educate our kids better. And it's our responsibility as their parents and as the adults to teach our kids. And if they're not your kids, teach your nieces, your nephews, teach the next generation.
I love it. Absolutely. Education. Amy, you want to take this one too?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Ali 100%. Education is key. And like I said, if you didn't have a good example growing up, be a better example for your kids. It's so important.
I really couldn't agree more. And Nate, go for it, buddy.
Yeah, Amy just stole my thunder. Yeah, be that good example. I mean, start looking in the mirror first, but we all have kids to raise and we need to provide them a clear path, but let's make sure that we're doing the right things first. And if we're doing the right things first, then we can start dealing with some of the things that they're dealing with. And the last thing I want to say, one thing we did not cover that I do think is super important is eating a meal together as a family. If you do have kids, one of the things that was big in my home growing up, and that we've tried to insist on it in my home now, is that family dinner. Mm-hmm. You got to show up. You got to participate. You can't just be in your phone. You got to show up and have that being present moment. And yeah. I think breaking bread is a great opportunity to be present with the people that you love and you care about. And that's especially true when it comes to teenagers. They won't show up for a lot of things, but they tend to keep showing up for food.
Yeah, I really thank my parents. Yes. We had family dinner every single night growing up. And like you said, it did play a huge role is getting able to be a part of it. And we got yelled at if we were on our phones, and we couldn't get at the table until dinner was over. There was no just, okay, we're done, bye. But it really helped build that family dynamic for all of you to learn together. And guys, I just want to thank you all for coming on. I want to thank the audience for participating in this. And just one final message from myself with this topic is take what you want from this. Don't think anyone on here is coming from a bad place, regardless of what we say. It's important to learn and educate ourselves. I think the education thing was the biggest take-home message from everybody. And whether it's more programs being implemented to the government and we start lobbying for it through that way, through our votes, or we just as parents take that responsibility to learn so we can teach our kids. Our kids are our future. I want, when I have my own kids, because I will one day, them to grow up in a society where they're loved, they're not picked on, they have healthy lives. You see more and more and more. It's so sad. The human lifespan has actually dropped. Think about that. The first time in history, our lifespans as humans has dropped. Society has brought us on all of an increase. And now with this obesity epidemic, it's actually decreasing. We're seeing kids die before their parents. And I'm talking about the people who they have their 80s and the kids are in their 60s, where I know so many people who lost kids before themselves, and it is extremely upsetting. So let's fix that curve, guys. Let's bring it back on, start increasing our lifespans. It all starts through education. Thank you all so much for coming on. Until next time, guys.